8000Hz polling rate is the new trending hotness for competitive gaming controllers, and GameSir has decided to join that trend with their new G7 Pro 8K. Is this 8000Hz trend here to stay though, or is it just a gimmick that provides no extra value outside of bragging rights? And is the new 8K worth getting, or are you better off just buying the regular G7 Pro? This is Ben, let's get into it. Obviously, I have the Aimlabs collab version of the G7 Pro 8K. There's two other versions of the 8K, but in my humble opinion, the Aimlabs version is the best looking. Packaging is good, and pretty much the same as the standard G7 Pro models. You have the outer sleeve with the graphics and technical info, and the main box that's two-piece friction fit. Inside is a molded shell. We'll come back to this in a bit. You have the wireless charging stand, standard black with the Aimlabs logo. Underneath that are the two other D-pad options. And the 2.4 GHz wireless dongle. Under the shell, you have the usual paper suspects. A sticker, a thank you and support slip, a booklet manual, which is so much better than the one giant paper manual that came with my regular G7 Pro, and a code for a 1-month trial for Aimlabs Premium. A nice little ad if you play a lot of Aimlabs. You have a really nice looking braided USB A to C cable that matches the color scheme. And you have extra thumbstick options. 2 longer domed, 2 shorter domed, and 2 shorter concave. Apparently, the factory that produced these sticks messed up and made some with black tops, like the ones I have here, but they're supposed to have the same turquoise tops that are on the stock sticks. I think if you contact GameSir through their Discord, they'll send you ones with the turquoise tops, or at least compensate you in some other way. Anyways, here's the controller. Unlike the 1000Hz G7 Pro models, the G7 Pro 8K is not an Xbox licensed controller. And in case you didn't know, one way you can easily tell if a controller is Xbox licensed or not is by the middle logo button. If it's not the Xbox X logo, it's not officially licensed for Xbox, and you won't be able to use the controller natively for Xbox consoles without a third-party adapter. The G7 Pro 8K is advertised as a PC controller, though from other users and reviewers, it also works on mobile, through Bluetooth, Linux, and the Nintendo Switch. I haven't personally tested the other connection options other than PC, so you'll have to verify through others. It weighs in at 267 grams, which is the same as my standard white G7 Pro. On the GameSir website, it's selling for $90 USD, and of course, the main feature of the controller is that it can pull up to 8000Hz, which in theory would make it one of the fastest controllers on the market right now. GamePadlet test results will verify just how fast the controller is, and we'll get into that in a bit. Another major selling point of the G7 Pro 8K is their TMR sticks. The other G7 Pro models use the K-Silver JS16 TMR modules, while the new 8K model uses the K-Silver JS13 Pro TMR modules, which are considered by most to be the best TMR stick modules currently available. I've used one other controller using GS13 Pros, the Zeno Plus from LeeJoy. Check out my full review on the controller if you want to know more about it, and I can at least attest to the fact that they're the best TMR modules I've personally used, and definitely better than the JS16s on the non-8K G7 Pros. Unlike the Xbox G7 Pros, the G7 Pro 8K doesn't have trigger vibration motors, only grip motors, so if having trigger vibration feedback is important to you, the 8K isn't for you. Likewise, the G7 Pro 8K does have macro and turbo functions, which the non-8K models do not have, because of Microsoft's licensing restrictions. Outside of those differences in the two major models, and of course the physical looks of the controllers, everything else is pretty much the same. Optical microswitch ABXY buttons, microswitch D-pad, dual mode triggers with Hall effect analog and microswitch digital, 4 extra remappable buttons, 2 on the back that can be locked, and 2 on the shoulders. It also has 6-axis gyro, a 3.5mm headset jack, and a 3-piece magnetic faceplate, which is interchangeable across all of the different versions of the G7 Pro. This section will be as much of a comparison as it is impressions, but as far as how the controller looks, I think it's pretty good, but could have been great if not for the gold colored D-pads. In isolation, the D-pad color is nice, but it doesn't match any part of the rest of the controller, other than the charging connector pins, I guess. An odd choice. The rest of the controller I think looks great and has a good balance of the Aimlabs theme without being too busy looking. Personally, I'm pretty boring with my controller appearances and I like minimal and clean aesthetics, but this turquoise and black combination looks really nice. In build quality and materials, this and the regular G7 Pro seem to be exactly the same. And yes, the faceplates, sticks, and D-pads are all interchangeable with each other. There is one subtle difference with the face buttons. For some reason, the ABXY on the Aimlabs have a dimple in the center of each button. You can't really see it on video, but I can definitely feel it. I don't know how I really feel about this. I don't think it'll really bother me during gaming, and it's somewhat subtle, but it's there. Let me know if you have this controller and also feel the dimples. Ergonomically, they're the exact same. The rubberized grips feel the same for both, and both of the handle plates have the same stipple texture. One of the big issues I had with the regular G7 Pro was the D-pad. It's loose, rattly, wobbly, and inaccurate, and I was inspired by a similar post about the Cyclone 2 D-pad to mod the G7 Pro with rubber O-rings. That made the D-pad feel much better, to me at least, and it seems like they've improved the feel and response of the D-pad with this new model. Taking the D-pad on and off, I can feel that the fit is much tighter and the internal mechanism is a lot less loose. The back buttons on the Aimlabs feel more dampened and the click is quieter and softer sounding. Overall, I don't really have any negative impressions about the Aimlabs version, outside of the D-pad color, and they've even improved some aspects of the controller, namely the D-pad feel. Hopefully the internal components of the trigger stops have also been improved, because I know that that was one of the semi-common failure points of the G7 Pro. The G7 Pro 8K has, of course, a maximum polling rate of 8000 Hz, and on Gamepadlet tests, there are some varying results across different polling rates, but they're all very fast, especially the stick latency, which would make the G7 Pro 8K one of, if not the fastest controller on the market right now. I will say that not everyone will be able to benefit from putting the polling rate to the max. If you have an older system, you might not be able to smoothly operate at 8000 Hz, and your performance will actually be worse. 4000 Hz and even 1000 Hz is still plenty fast, so even if you can't go all the way up to 8000 Hz, performance will still be very competitive.
Oh shit. Oh my god. Oh my god.
When I first heard about this controller being teased, I figured that it really wouldn't be all that, and having 8000 Hz polling rate was more of a marketing gimmick than an actual game-changing feature. And although I still think that the 8000 Hz polling is not all it's cracked up to be, especially if your PC can't handle the load, what I think is the real game changer for the G7 Pro 8K are the JS13 Pro stick modules. On the regular G7 Pros with the JS16 modules, it's still a very good controller, but it felt too sensitive, I guess would be the best explanation I can think of. When initially moving the sticks, and especially in COD, I was pretty inconsistent with my tracking and my snapping from one enemy to the next. These JS13 Pro modules on the 8K feels way more linear, and my tracking and snapping is a lot more consistent and a lot more natural feeling. I have one other experience with these modules in the Xeno Plus controller that I just reviewed, and they feel pretty much the same when it comes to accuracy and linearity. Now, if only the shape of the G7 Pro was closer to the Xbox shape, it might dethrone my Vader 4 Pro as my go-to controller for COD. To be honest, it might still dethrone my Vader 5 Pro. The sticks are that good. The tension adjustment, comfort, and extra buttons are a big trade-off though. In Halo, it's definitely my go-to controller now. I was switching back and forth between my Vader 5 Pro, my regular G7 Pro, and my Mojon Rainbow 3 for this game, but the performance of the G7 Pro 8K is just so good that I really don't even want to use another controller for Halo right now. My tracking feels smoother and more responsive, my aiming feels more consistent and less floaty. Outside of ergonomic comfort, I really don't have many complaints about this controller when it comes to gaming. As a little bonus, and because it is an Aimlabs collaboration, I decided to play some of the aim trainer with the controller. Disclaimer, I have played a lot of Aimlabs in the past, but only on mouse. I've never played on controller, so this is a totally new experience for me. Seems like Gridshot is one of the more popular modes, so I played a bunch of that. And as you can see, my results are all over the place in score and accuracy. I have no idea if these scores are good on controller or not, but I imagine I can get a lot better if I keep on playing it. And this is using the sticks, not gyro. Maybe I'll add this to my game testing suite since it's a pretty decent way to test accuracy with no aim assist helping. I don't think this aim training will be very useful in actually making me better in COD or Halo though, since the sticks response don't feel the same, and I'm not actually using any other parts of the controller other than the right trigger and right thumbstick. Still a fun test though. The G7 Pro 8K uses GameSir's Connect software app, which separates it from the other G7 Pro models, which use GameSir's Nexus software. The layout and function for both apps are pretty much the same. Nexus is for GameSir's Xbox licensed controllers, and Connect is for the rest of their lineup, other than the T4 Khalid. Connecting your controller should auto-put the app into this main page. You can set up 4 different profiles and rename each profile. Starting with buttons, you can set up your buttons mapping here, and if you click on advanced settings, you'll be able to map your buttons to mouse and keyboard keys as well as setting up multi-button mappings in Turbo. You can also swap the left stick and D-pad, and lock the D-pad so it only reads 4 directions instead of 8. Moving on to the sticks, you can set up inner and outer dead zones, adjust the response curves, switch to circle or raw mode, and choose the stick resolution from 8-bit to 12-bit. Clicking on advanced mapping will give you a few more options, including the stick filtering, which seems to be a hot topic in the controller space right now. Next section is for gyro settings. Then you have your trigger settings, vibrations, and last tab is for the RGB lighting around the home button, as well as adjusting the brightness and the auto on-off for the charging dock. Going back to the main page, right under the controller graphic, you can change the polling rate between 250Hz, 1000Hz, 4000Hz, and 8000Hz. On the top right, we have a couple more options. The first is an information pop-up with a QR code for their Discord channel. The next is for firmware updates. You'll see a red dot on the square if the app or the controller needs updating. Then you have a reset button to set whatever profile you're on back to default settings. You have a button test page to make sure all of your buttons are functioning properly. You can also calibrate your sticks and triggers and gyro here. And the last button sends you back to the previous page. The G7 Pro 8K is good. Real good. GameSir was really able to flex their competitive controller making muscles without the Xbox licensing weighing them down, and I think they hit it out of the park on almost all aspects with this controller. It's not perfect, of course. No controller will ever be, because everyone has their own different preferences, and what might be a must-have for some of you can at the same time be a pointless addition for others. For example, I really like tension adjustable sticks, and I wish that all controllers would have them as a standard. But I also know a few people that consider them just a gimmick that provides no value. For me personally, I only have two small issues with the G7 Pro 8K. The first is the D-pad. It's definitely improved from the standard G7 Pro, but I still find it a little too loose and wobbly, and being gold colored was definitely one of the choices of all time. I get that the idea is probably to tie in the Aimlabs Plus Pro version, which has the gold color scheme, but the D-pad stands out like a sore thumb because nothing else on the controller matches it. Like maybe if the extra shoulder buttons were also gold colored, everything would look a little more cohesive. My other issue is with the overall shape of the G7 Pro. It just doesn't quite fit my hand with the same comfort as the more traditional Xbox shaped controllers, so it starts to cramp my thumbs a little bit after a while, and I have to take a small break. This is very person to person though, and a lot of you are going to find the G7 shape very comfortable, especially if your hands are on the smaller end. When it comes to straight up performance though, this controller is easily top 3 for me right now, at least for the controllers I've had and tested. If you're looking for a competitive PC controller with 4 extra inputs, and you don't mind having a mid D-pad, I highly recommend this controller. Hopefully the durability of this controller is good, and as a reference, my G7 Pro of almost 1 year still works totally fine. We'll know soon enough if there's other underlying issues with this new model as more people get it, use it, and abuse it, but for now, it gets my 2 thumbs up. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments if this review was helpful, and if you have any other questions and anything to add that maybe I didn't answer in the video. I try to respond to as much of you as I can. Thanks again, and until next time.